After heart surgery, I posted in our family group chat, "Who's picking me up from the hospital?" My son responded, "Just call a taxi. I'm watching TV." My wife added, "Stay in the hospital for another month. It's so nice without you." But when they saw me on the news that night, their 67 calls went unanswered. What I did next changed everything. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and leave a comment with your current time and location. The pain struck like a bolt of lightning, splitting my chest. My eyes snapped open to a harsh white light that made my head throb. Where was I? The room swayed sickeningly. The walls were white, machines beeped, and tubes snaked from my arms like plastic vines. I tried to sit up, and my body cried out in protest. Something was terribly wrong. My chest felt as if it had been pried open with a crowbar. I could feel thick bandages wrapped around my torso beneath the thin hospital gown. "Mr. Thompson, you're awake." A woman in a white coat with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses appeared beside my bed. "I'm Dr. Carter, your cardiologist. How are you feeling?" "Like I was hit by a truck," I croaked, my voice a hoarse whisper. My throat was raw. "What happened to me?" She checked a monitor next to the bed. The numbers meant nothing to me, but her expression stayed calm and professional. "You had emergency cardiac surgery 2 days ago. A triple bypass. Your heart stopped for 47 seconds during the procedure." 47 seconds. The words echoed in my mind like stones dropped into a deep well. Was I dead? Technically, yes, but we brought you back. She pressed her fingers against my wrist, checking my pulse. "You're gonna be fine, Mr. Thompson. The surgery was a success. 2 weeks in the hospital for recovery, then a gradual return to your normal activities." 2 weeks. I looked around the sterile room. A small window showed the gray Dallas skyline under a cloudy January sky. There were no flowers or cards on the bedside table, no sign that anyone knew I was here. A nurse, Jennifer, bustled in, checking the 4 drip in my left arm. With a warm smile and gentle hands, she adjusted the flow rate. "I'll be taking care of you this shift. Are you in any pain right now?" I nodded, not trusting my voice. She noted it on her chart and increased something in my 4. Within minutes, the sharp pain began to fade. Dr. Carter pulled up a chair. "I need to ask you some questions to check your cognitive function. What year is it?" 2025. "Good, and what month?" "January." The word felt heavy on my tongue. "Excellent. Now squeeze my hands as hard as you can." My grip was as weak as a newborn's, but she nodded approvingly. "Your motor functions look good. Memory seems intact." She stood and made notes on her tablet. "The next few days will focus on managing pain and starting gentle movement. We'll have you walking short distances soon." After she left, I was alone with the beeping machines. I cautiously reached for the bedside table where someone had placed my belongings. My fingers found my phone. The screen showed dozens of notifications, news apps, email spam, pharmacy reminders. I scrolled down looking for something else. Messages from family, missed calls from Susan or Scott, nothing. The family group chat's last message was from 3 weeks ago. Susan complaining about her favorite yogurt being out of stock. Before that, Scott was asking for money for car repairs. Not a single message about my surgery. Not one call to ask how I was doing. With trembling fingers, I put the phone down and stared at the ceiling tiles. 47 seconds of being dead, and apparently no one had even noticed I was gone. Not one message, not a single call. I closed my eyes and let the hospital room silence wash over me. The antiseptic smell brought back memories I had been avoiding for months. It started in the summer of 2020. I was in the garden behind our Arlington house, planting tomatoes in the heat. A band-like tightness squeezed my chest. I gripped the fence post until it passed, telling myself it was just the Texas heat. "Buford, you're being dramatic again," Susan had called from the back porch, iced tea in hand. "Come inside before you have a stroke out there." I'd laughed it off. 66 years old and still strong as an ox, I told myself. I just needed more water, more rest. But the episodes continued. By 2021, climbing the stairs to our bedroom felt like a mountain expedition. I'd pause on the landing, gripping the banister, my heart hammering against my ribs. Susan would already be in bed, watching her evening shows. "You're getting old," she'd say without looking away from the TV. Maybe cut back on those weekend projects. I never told her about the metallic taste that filled my mouth during the worst episodes, or how the world would tilt when I stood up too fast. She had enough to worry about with her book club and charity meetings. Scott was even less helpful. When I mentioned feeling tired all the time, he just shrugged from his spot on the living room couch. Maybe see a doctor, Dad. Actually, wait, that's expensive. Try some vitamins first. 28 years old and living in our basement, yet he worried about my medical bills affecting his inheritance. The first real attack happened on a Tuesday morning in March 2023. I was making coffee when the pain hit like a sledgehammer. I grabbed the counter, coffee grounds scattering as I slid down to the cold linoleum floor. "Susan!" I called out, but my voice barely went beyond the kitchen doorway. She found me 10 minutes later, still on the floor, breathing in short gasps. "Oh, Buford, did you fall?" She helped me to a chair, but her attention was already shifting. "I've got my hair appointment in an hour. Are you okay to drive yourself to the doctor?" I drove myself to the emergency room instead. The young doctor who examined me had concerned eyes and steady hands. "Miss Thompson, you've had a minor heart attack. We need to run more tests." The tests confirmed my fears. Years of chest pain hadn't been aging or stress. My arteries were closing like old, rusted pipes. "Without surgery, you have 6 months, maybe less," Dr. Martinez had told me in November. "But with a triple bypass, you could have 10 good years ahead of you." I drove home in my old Chevy truck, my hands shaking on the steering wheel. 10 good years. The question was whether I wanted to spend them with people who barely noticed I was dying. The sound of my hospital room door opening brought me back to the present. Nurse Jennifer peeked in, checking on me with that warm smile. "How are you feeling, Mr. Thompson? Need anything for pain?" I looked at my phone, still showing no messages from my family, just thinking about things. I said. She nodded knowingly. "Surgery gives people time to think. Sometimes that's good, sometimes not so much." After she left, I stared at the family group chat contact on my phone. My finger hovered over it, hesitating. 2 weeks since surgery, 2 weeks of silence. Maybe the hospital hadn't contacted them properly. Maybe there was still hope that 45 years of marriage and raising a son meant something. Maybe. The morning of January 29th arrived, crisp and bright through my hospital window. Freedom Day. I packed my belongings into the old sports bag Susan had given me years ago for weekend fishing trips. Each item was folded carefully. My reading glasses, the paperback I'd barely touched, the pajamas that still smelled like home. My chest felt stronger today. The stitches pulled when I moved, but the crushing pain had faded to a manageable ache. Dr. Carter had signed my discharge papers with a smile. "You're lucky to be alive, Mr. Thompson. Make the most of this second chance." I checked my phone for the 20th time that morning. Still nothing from Susan or Scott. 2 weeks of complete silence while I fought my way back from the edge of death. Maybe they thought I was still too sick for visitors. Maybe they were planning a welcome home surprise. I had always been the one to handle medical emergencies, driving Susan for her appendectomy, taking Scott to the ER when he broke his arm. They probably just didn't know how to act when I was the patient. I typed a message in the group chat. "Hi everyone, I'm being discharged today and feeling much better. Can't wait to see you all." I deleted it. Too long, too emotional. They'd think I was being needy. I tried again. Hospital is releasing me today. Looking forward to coming home. Deleted. Still too much. Third attempt. The doctor says I can come home today. Would love to see everyone. My finger hovered over send. This felt right. Hopeful but not desperate, I pressed send and set the phone on the bed. The response came faster than I expected. Scott's name appeared first. "Call a taxi. I'm watching TV." I'm watching TV. I stared at the message, reading it 3 times to make sure I understood. 47 seconds of being clinically dead, 2 weeks in intensive care. And my son couldn't be bothered to pause his TV show, but Susan would be different. We'd been married 45 years. She'd want to bring me home personally. Her message appeared below Scott's. "Stay another month in hospital. It's so good without you." The phone slipped from my hands onto the white hospital blanket. The words glowed on the screen like a neon sign announcing the end of everything I'd believed about my family. "Stay another month. It's so good without you." I sat heavily on the edge of the bed, my sports bag sliding to the floor. The morning sunshine streaming through the window felt like mockeries. Fru. My chest ached, but not from the surgery. This pain came from a place Dr. Carter's scalpel couldn't reach. Nurse Jennifer appeared in my doorway, clipboard in hand. She took one look at my face and stepped inside, closing the door. "Mr. Thompson, you look pale. Are you having chest pain?" I shook my head, not trusting my voice. She picked up my phone and glanced at the screen. Her expression shifted from professional concern to something softer, sadder. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "Family can be complicated." Complicated. That was one way to put it. Another way was that I'd spent 45 years giving everything to people who saw me as nothing more than a paycheck and a caretaker, people who found my absence more pleasant than my presence. I looked at my discharge papers spread across the bed, medication instructions, follow-up appointments, warnings about avoiding heavy lifting. But as I sat there reading Susan's words on my phone, those papers began to look like something else entirely. They looked like freedom. The papers in my hands weren't just discharge instructions anymore. They were evidence of 45 years of being a fool. I walked out of Memorial Hospital on unsteady legs, each step a reminder that I had nearly died and no one cared. The taxi driver was a weathered Hispanic man with kind eyes. "Tough day at the hospital, amigo?" "Tough 45 years. The words came out before I could stop them. He glanced at me in the rearview mirror as we pulled into Dallas traffic. "Surgery?" I nodded, settling back against the vinyl seat. The discharge papers crinkled in my lap. Suddenly, I was remembering another time I'd held important papers in shaking hands. 1982. Scott was just a baby, and I was 25 with dreams bigger than our small apartment. I'd saved for 2 years to buy that motorcycle, a beautiful Harley-Davidson that made me feel alive. "Babies need cribs, not motorcycles. The bike has to go," Susan had said, bouncing Scott on her hip. "We need the money for baby furniture." I'd polished the chrome one last time before putting a for sale sign on it. $3,000 for freedom, traded away for responsibility. I told myself it was temporary just until Scott was older. The taxi passed a motorcycle dealership. Rows of bikes gleamed in the afternoon sun, and my chest ached with more than surgical scars. "Family's tough sometimes," the driver said, navigating toward the highway. "Mine too." Hi. Another memory surfaced. 1995, Susan and I were planning our delayed honeymoon, 15 years late, but finally within reach. Paris in springtime. I'd been saving for months, working overtime at the factory. Then Scott got accepted to college. "Europe will always be there," Susan had said, tears streaming down her face as she tore up the travel brochures. "Scott's education is more important. 4 years of college expenses." The Paris dreams went into a box with my other postponed happiness. We were passing through downtown now, the glass towers reflecting the gray January sky. I remembered driving this same route in 2003, exhausted from pulling double shifts, while Susan stayed home watching her soap operas. When do I get to rest? I'd asked her once. When Scott graduates and gets a good job, she'd promised, then we'll have time for us. Scott graduated, then he needed help with rent, then a car loan, then seed money for his graphic design business that folded within 6 months. The business loan memory hit hardest. 2010. I'd signed papers putting our house up as collateral while Scott sketched grand plans on restaurant napkins. "This is our ticket, Dad. 6 months and I'll pay back everything with interest." The business lasted 4 months. I worked 3 more years to pay off that loan. The taxi turned onto familiar Arlington streets. We passed the elementary school where I'd coached Scott's Little League team, missing my own dreams. We passed the park where I'd pushed Susan on swings during our courtship, back when she looked at me like I was her hero instead of her ATM. "You got people picking you up?" the driver asked as we neared my neighborhood. I thought about the text still burning in my phone. "Call a taxi. Stay another month. It's so good without you." "No," I said quietly. "I think I'm done being picked." The house appeared around the corner, white siding, green shutters, the lawn I'd mowed every Saturday for 20 years. It should have looked like home. Instead, it looked like a monument to my stupidity. I paid the driver and stood on the sidewalk, looking at 45 years of mortgage payments and maintenance work. Also, Susan could have her book club meetings and Scott could have his gaming set up. The driver pulled away, leaving me alone with my thoughts and a house that felt like evidence of my biggest mistake. I walked toward the front door, the keys heavy in my hand. The house looked different now, not like home, but like a crime scene. And the key turned with a soft click, and I stepped into the darkness. Even the entryway felt foreign, like entering someone else's life. I flipped the light switch and stared at what my family had done with their freedom. Mail was piled on the small table by the door. Unopened bills and advertisements scattered carelessly. Susan's shoes lay where she'd kicked them off beside Scott's muddy sneakers. No one had bothered picking up after themselves for weeks. The living room was worse. Scott's gaming setup had exploded across the space. Energy drink cans formed a pyramid on my coffee table. Pizza boxes stacked beside my recliner, the chair I'd bought with overtime money 15 years ago. They had been having parties. I moved slowly through the evidence of their comfort. My absence hadn't caused grief or concern. It had caused celebration. The kitchen told the same story. Dishes piled in the sink, takeout containers filling the trash. The refrigerator held expensive wine and premium ice cream, luxuries they'd bought while I was fighting for my life. But my study was the final insult. They'd turned it into storage. Boxes of Susan's craft supplies covered my desk. Scott's old computer equipment was stacked on my bookcases. Dust had settled over the family photos I'd arranged so carefully on my shelves. 47 seconds. I'd been dead for 47 seconds, and they'd used my personal space as a closet. I sat heavily in the one chair they hadn't covered. The combination to my safe was still burned into my memory. Scott's birthday. How fitting. The safe opened with a soft mechanical whisper. Inside, my will sat in its blue legal folder. I pulled it out with steady hands and read the provisions I'd crafted so carefully. To my beloved wife, Susan Thompson, the house and all personal property. To my son, Scott Thompson, all financial assets, including retirement accounts, to be divided equally upon my death. Beloved wife, I laughed bitterly, the sound echoing in my violated study. The woman who told me to stay in the hospital another month because it was so good without me. My son, the 38-year-old man who couldn't pause his TV show to pick up his dying father. I walked to the family photos on my dusty shelves. Wedding pictures showed a young couple full of hope. Scott's baby pictures captured innocent smiles. Vacation photos documented trips I paid for but barely enjoyed, always worried about the cost. In every picture, I was smiling. The provider, the protector, the fool. I opened my phone and searched the state attorney's ballot. The screen filled with law firm names and phone numbers. Professional people who understood that wills could be changed, that inheritance was a privilege, not a right. Jonathan Hale and Associates appeared at the top of the list, experienced in estate planning and charitable giving. Perfect. I looked around my study one more time at the boxes, the dust, the evidence of my family's disrespect. Then I looked at the will in my lap. Tomorrow I would call Mr. Hale. Tomorrow I would fix the biggest mistake of my life. Tonight I would plan how to give my family exactly what they deserved. Nothing. The elevator climbed past floor after floor, each number bringing me closer to justice. 15 floors up in this downtown Dallas high-rise, Jonathan Hale waited with the power to rewrite my family's future. A week had passed since my homecoming revelation. 7 days of research, planning, and gathering documents. I'd found the American Heart Disease Foundation online, a charity that helped families during cardiac emergencies, people who actually valued the gift of life. The elevator doors opened to a hallway lined with mahogany and brass. Hale & Associates was etched in gold on the frosted glass doors. Mr. Thompson, the receptionist's smile was professional and warm. Mr. Hale is ready for you. Jonathan Hale's office overlooked downtown Dallas through floor-to-ceiling windows. Law books lined the walls between framed degrees from universities I'd never dreamed of attending. He was younger than I'd expected, maybe 55. With silver hair and intelligent eyes. Please sit down. He gestured to a leather chair across from his massive desk. I understand you want to make significant changes to your estate plan. I settled into the chair, my folder of documents balanced on my knees. I want to leave everything to charity, nothing to my family. His eyebrows rose slightly. That's quite a substantial change. May I ask what prompted this decision? I told him about the surgery, being dead for 47 seconds, 2 weeks of hospital abandonment, and coming home to find they'd been partying while I fought for my life. Hale listened without interruption, taking notes on a yellow legal pad. Mr. Thompson, I have to ask, are you making this decision while you're angry? Sometimes after a medical crisis, people... I've had a week to think about it, I said. I opened my folder and pulled out printed emails, bank statements, and medical records. This isn't anger. This is clarity. He reviewed my documents carefully. You're quite thorough. The American Heart Disease Foundation is an excellent choice. They provide housing for families of cardiac patients, fund research, support recovery programs. People who appreciate the value of life, I said. Unlike my family, we could structure this as a charitable remainder trust. You'd retain lifetime use of your home, receive a small monthly income, and upon your death, everything transfers to the foundation. Perfect. I could live comfortably while knowing my family would inherit exactly what they'd earned. What about your wife and son? Even a small bequest might. No. The word came out harder than I'd intended. They're adults. It's time they learn to support themselves. Hale studied me for a long moment. Very well. This will take about an hour to draft properly. Are you certain? I thought about Scott's message. Call a taxi. I'm watching TV, and Susan's words, stay another month. It's so good without you. I've never been more certain of anything in my life. The next hour was a blur of legal language and document preparation. Hale's secretary brought in witnesses, 2 paralegals who didn't know me from any other client. This revokes all previous wills and codicils, Hale explained as he laid the documents before me. Upon your death, your home and all assets transfer to the American Heart Disease Foundation. You retain lifetime residence rights and a modest monthly stipend. I read every word twice. No mention of Susan, no provision for Scott. Just clean legal language that would transform my family's comfortable assumptions into a very different reality. The signing ceremony was simple. 3 signatures, 2 witnesses, 1 notary stamp. 45 years of supporting an ungrateful family, erased with black ink on white paper. I'll contact the foundation this week, Hale said, handing me certified copies. They'll want to meet with you, discuss the media announcement possibilities. Media announcement? I like the sound of that. Public recognition for charity. Public embarrassment for my family. The foundation offices are in this building, he continued. 12th floor. Their media coordinator, Rebecca Mills, is excellent at handling these kinds of stories. I stood to leave, Kate. The certified copies were safely tucked in my jacket pocket. At the door, Hale shook my hand with genuine respect. You're giving a generous gift, Mr. Thompson. The foundation helps hundreds of families every year. Families who deserve help, I replied, unlike mine. The hallway seemed brighter as I walked to the elevator. Behind me, Hale's office held the machinery of justice. Ahead, the foundation offices waited with the power to turn private satisfaction into public vindication. The foundation offices were just 3 floors down. Time to turn private justice into a public message. The elevator opened to a bright reception area decorated with heart health posters and success stories. Mr. Thompson, Rebecca Mills emerged from a corner office, a mix of business efficiency and warm smile. I'm Rebecca Mills, Media Coordinator. Thank you for choosing our foundation. Her office walls displayed awards and framed newspaper clippings. This woman understood the power of a good story. Please sit down. She gestured to a comfortable chair. Your attorney mentioned you want to make your donation public. Tell me about your situation. I explained everything. The surgery, the 47 seconds, the hospital abandonment, the cruel text messages. Rebecca listened intently, taking notes. This is powerful, she said when I finished. Your story could save hundreds of lives. People need to understand how vital family support is during a medical crisis. If my pain helps someone else, then it's worth it. She picked up her phone and dialed. Channel 8, this is Rebecca Mills at the Heart Foundation. I have a story for you. A local man is donating his entire estate after his family abandoned him during heart surgery. The conversation lasted 10 minutes. Rebecca's eyes lit up as she talked. They can have a crew at your house this afternoon. Perfect timing. Heart disease awareness. Week starts Monday. The morning flew by in preparation. Rebecca coached me on key messages, the importance of family support, the foundation's mission, the reality of cardiac recovery. But most importantly, she wanted me to tell the truth about my family's abandonment. Don't hold back, she advised. People respond to authentic emotion. Your story will touch hearts and save lives. By noon, we were at Channel 8's studio downtown. The news producer, a sharp woman named Jennifer, understood immediately why this story mattered. A man gives away his house after his family texts him to stay in the hospital longer? Jennifer shook her head. This is going to resonate with viewers? The studio interview went smoothly. Bright lights, professional cameras, questions I'd practiced with Rebecca. The interviewer, David Martinez, had the perfect blend of sympathy and journalistic precision. Mr. Thompson, what went through your mind when you read those text messages? I realize that love should be mutual, I replied steadily. Gratitude is a choice, not an obligation. For 45 years, I chose to put my family first. When I needed them most, they chose differently. Why donate specifically to heart disease research? They saved my life when my heart stopped for 47 seconds. My family didn't seem to care whether I lived or died. After the studio interview, the crew followed me home to Arlington. Neighbors peeked from behind curtains as the Channel 8 van parked in my driveway. Professional cameras captured the house that would soon belong to the foundation. Inside, David asked more personal questions. We sat in my living room, the same room where Scott had expanded his gaming setup. This is where you recovered after coming home? This is where I discovered they'd been living comfortably without me, having parties, ordering expensive food, using my study for storage. The camera panned across family photos on the mantle. Wedding pictures, Scott's graduation, vacation memories, all funded by my sacrifices, all witnesses to my wasted devotion. Do you have any regrets about this decision? I looked directly into the camera. My only regret is that it took me 68 years to understand my own worth. The crew finished filming by late afternoon. David shook my hand. This will air tonight at 6. I expect it'll get picked up by other stations too. I spent the evening at a quiet downtown restaurant, my phone occasionally buzzing with messages from Rebecca about social media preparation. The Foundation's online team was ready to capitalize on the story's impact. At exactly 6:00, I watched myself on the restaurant's television. The news anchor introduced the story with perfect dramatic timing. A Dallas area man is making headlines tonight after donating his house to charity. But it's the reason behind his generosity that has everyone talking. My face filled the screen. Calm, dignified, telling the truth about family betrayal and medical abandonment. The segment included footage of my house, my explanation of the foundation donation, and Rebecca's comments about the importance of supporting cardiac patients. The restaurant was quiet, but I could see other diners glancing at the television, then at me. Some looked sympathetic, others outraged on my behalf. My phone remained silent. Rebecca had advised me to let the story spread naturally before checking social media. By tomorrow, she predicted, the story would be everywhere. As I drove home, I wondered if my family had seen the broadcast. They watched the local news religiously, usually complaining about the weather or arguing with political coverage. But tonight, they'd see their own cruelty broadcast to thousands of strangers. Tonight, they'd realize their comfortable life was ending. The garage door opened to reveal the same house I'd left that morning, but everything had changed. By tomorrow morning, Scott and Susan would understand that their 45 years of taking me for granted had finally caught up with them. I turned off the television and went to bed, sleeping peacefully for the first time since my surgery. The evening news was just background noise in the Thompson living room. Susan flipped through her magazines while Scott divided his attention between his video game and the TV. Leftover pizza boxes and empty soda cans showed how comfortably they had settled into life without Buford. Another boring day, Scott muttered, mashing buttons on his controller. Nothing ever happens in this stupid town. Susan looked up. At least we don't have to deal with your father's constant worrying. Remember how we used to fuss about every little expense? They both laughed, completely unaware that their world was about to explode. The news anchor's voice changed tone. A Dallas area man is making headlines tonight after donating his house to charity. But it's the reason behind his generosity that has everyone talking. Scott's game controller slipped from his fingers. The house on the television screen looked exactly like theirs. The same white siding, the same green shutters, the same oak tree. "Mom," Scott whispered, "that's our house." Susan's magazine fell to the floor. They stared at the screen in growing horror as the camera panned across their property. This couldn't be happening. It had to be a mistake. Then Buford's face filled the screen. "Oh my God," Susan breathed. "That's your father." They listened in stunned silence as Buford explained his situation. Heart surgery, clinical death, for 47 seconds. Family abandonment. "When I asked my family to pick me up from the hospital," Buford said calmly, "my son told me to call a taxi because he was watching television. My wife said I should stay another month because it was so good without me." Scott's face went white. Those were his exact words. Susan covered her mouth with both hands, recognizing her own cruel message broadcast to the entire Dallas area. "This is impossible," Susan screamed at the TV. "He can't do this. That's our house." The news segment continued with Buford explaining his decision to donate everything to the Heart Disease Foundation. No mention of family inheritance. No provision for Susan or Scott. "Call him." Susan grabbed Scott's arm, shaking him. "Call him right now." Scott fumbled for his phone, his hands trembling as he dialed his father's number. The call went straight to voicemail. "Dear Scott, I saw the news." "What are you doing?" "Call us back immediately." Susan snatched the phone and tried herself. Voicemail, "Buford Thompson, this is your wife. You call me back this instant."